Silence! One more outburst from the gallery and I will clear this entire courtroom. Judge Sterling's voice boomed like thunder, shaking the dust off the velvet drapes. But the chaos was already unstoppable. On one side of the aisle, billionaire Marcus Vance sat with his head in his hands, his face drained of color. Beside him, his mistress, Jessica, was screaming, clawing at her diamond necklace as if it were strangling her. And standing calmly in the center of the storm was Eleanor, the wife they had thrown out like garbage, holding the hands of two identical, golden-haired toddlers. Everyone thought the hearing was about a divorce settlement. They were wrong. When the judge opened the sealed envelope, he didn't just end a marriage, he exposed a lie so dark it destroyed an empire in 10 seconds flat. You think you know how this ends? You have no idea. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall. It felt like it was trying to erase the city. On the morning of November 14th, the sky was a bruised purple, hanging low over the granite steps of the King County Superior Court. Elena Vance stepped out of the crosstown bus, clutching a broken umbrella that threatened to invert with every gust of wind. She wore a beige trench coat that had seen better days, specifically days 3 years ago when she was still the envy of the city's socialite circle. Now, the hem was frayed, and the buttons were mismatched. She checked her reflection in the darkened window of a parked car. Her eyes were shadowed by fatigue, her cheekbones sharper than they used to be. She looked exactly like what her husband's lawyers claimed she was, unstable, broken, and destitute. A sleek, obsidian-black Maybach pulled up to the curb, splashing muddy water onto Elena's worn boots. She didn't flinch. She knew who was inside. The driver, a man Elena once knew as kind old Thomas, stepped out with a stony expression. He opened the rear door, and Marcus Vance emerged. Marcus looked like a man who owned the rain. His charcoal 3-piece suit was tailored to perfection, hugging a frame kept fit by personal trainers and organic diets. He adjusted his silk tie, his eyes scanning the crowd of reporters gathering at the bottom of the stairs. He didn't look at Eleanor. To him, she was already a ghost. Then came the click-clack of stilettos. Jessica Thorne slithered out of the car, clinging to Marcus's arm like a vine. At 24, Jessica was the definition of new money, loud, flashy, and desperate to be seen. She wore a white fur coat that cost more than Elena's current yearly budget, and her left hand was raised deliberately to catch the camera flashes, showcasing a canary yellow diamond ring the size of a grape. "Marcus, honey, look," Jessica sneered, finally spotting Eleanor shivering near the entrance. Her voice was high and grating, designed to carry. She actually showed up. And look at that coat. Did she pull it out of a dumpster? Marcus spared Eleanor a single cold glance. It wasn't hatred in his eyes. It was indifference. That hurt worse. "Ignore her, Jess. It's just a formality. By noon, she'll be a memory." Eleanor tightened her grip on her handbag. Inside was a stack of crumpled documents and a photo of 2 children hidden deep in her wallet. She took a breath, inhaling the scent of wet asphalt and exhaust fumes. Let them laugh, she thought, her heart hammering a rhythm of terrified defiance against her ribs. Let them think I'm weak. She walked up the stairs, keeping her distance. The reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Vance, is it true you're offering a $10 million settlement?" "Elena, do you have any comment on the adultery allegations?" Elena kept her head down. Adultery. That was the weapon Marcus was using to void their prenuptial agreement. He claimed she had cheated. He claimed she was barren and had sought comfort elsewhere. It was a lie, a fabrication, bought and paid for by his high-powered legal team, Sterling and Cates. But in the court of public opinion, Marcus Vance, the tech mogul, the philanthropist, was a saint dealing with a crazy, unfaithful wife. As they passed through the metal detectors, the security guard, a man named Miller who used to work the gate at the Vance estate, looked at Elena with pity. "Morning, Mrs. Vance," he whispered. "Just Elena, Miller. Just Elena," she replied softly. Inside the courtroom, the air was stale and heavy. The gallery was packed. Marcus's PR team had filled the back rows with sympathizers. Elena walked to the defendant's table alone. She had no high-priced lawyer. She had a public defender named Sarah Jenkins, a young, overworked woman with frizzy hair and coffee stains on her blouse, who was currently shuffling through a mountain of paperwork. "You made it," Sarah said, looking up with a relieved sigh. "I thought you might balk. They're going to play dirty today, Elena. Marcus's lawyer, Mr. Blackwood, is a shark. He's going to paint you as a gold digger who couldn't give him an heir and cheated out of spite." Elena sat down, her hands folded on the table. She looked across the aisle. Marcus was whispering something into Jessica's ear, making her giggle. Jessica's hand rested protectively over her stomach, a small, deliberate bump visible beneath her tight dress. She was pregnant. That was the final nail in Eleanor's coffin, or so they thought, the sterile wife versus the fertile mistress. "I'm ready, Sarah," Eleanor said, her voice trembling slightly. "But they aren't." Sarah looked at her client, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Eleanor whispered, her eyes hardening as the bailiff announced the arrival of the judge. "Marcus thinks he's burying me today, but he's digging his own grave." To understand why the courtroom was about to explode, you have to understand the silence of the Vance mansion 2 years ago. Elena and Marcus had been married for 7 years. It had started as a fairy tale. Marcus was the heir to the Vance logistics shipping empire. Elena was the daughter of a university professor studying art history. He loved her quiet grace. She loved his ambition. But the empire demanded an heir. For 5 years they tried. Doctors, specialists, IVF rounds that left Elena bruised, bloated, and weeping on the bathroom floor. Marcus was supportive at first, but as the years ticked by, his patience eroded. He stopped coming to the appointments. He started working late. He began sleeping in the guest wing. Then came Jessica. She started as his executive assistant. She was everything Eleanor wasn't: loud, uninhibited, and willing to play dirty. Eleanor found the texts 6 months before the separation. At first, she tried to ignore them, convincing herself it was a phase. She cooked his favorite meals. He didn't eat them. She planned vacations. He cancelled them. The end came on a Tuesday. Elena had returned from a doctor's appointment with news. Miraculous, terrifying news. She had finally succeeded. The latest round of IVF, which she had done almost in secret, using the last of the viable embryos from their storage, had taken. She was pregnant. She had rushed home, clutching the ultrasound strip, ready to fix everything. She found her luggage on the driveway. Marcus was standing in the foyer, sipping scotch. Jessica was sitting on the grand staircase, wearing one of Eleanor's silk robes. "What is this?" Eleanor had asked, the rain beginning to spot her blouse. "It's over, Elle," Marcus said, not even looking up from his glass. "I'm tired of the sadness in this house. I'm tired of the failure. I need a woman who is alive, a woman who can give me a legacy." "Marcus, I have something to tell you," Elena pleaded, stepping forward. "Please, just listen." "I'm done listening," he snapped, hurling the glass into the fireplace. It shattered, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "I'm filing for divorce, incompatibility, and don't bother fighting the prenup. My lawyers have evidence regarding your extracurricular activities." "Extracurricular?" Elena was stunned. "I have never looked at another man." "Doesn't matter what's true," Jessica chimed in, walking down the stairs and draping her arms around Marcus's neck. "It only matters what you can prove, and Marcus has very good lawyers. Get out, Elena. You're depressing the furniture." Elena looked at the man she had loved for a decade. He didn't stop Jessica. He didn't defend her. He just looked at his watch, as if he were waiting for a meeting to end. In that moment, something inside Elena broke. But it wasn't her spirit. It was her naivety. She realized that telling him about the pregnancy now would only lead to one of two things. He would accuse her of faking it, or worse, he would take the child away from her and raise it with this woman. Marcus had the money to crush her in a custody battle. He would paint her as unfit, take the baby, and leave her with nothing. She gripped the ultrasound picture in her pocket, crumpling it into a tight ball. "Fine," Elena said, her voice ice cold. "I'll leave." She walked out into the rain, leaving the mansion, the money, and the life she knew. She moved into a women's shelter in downtown Seattle, then a tiny, moldy studio apartment. She sold her jewelry to pay for prenatal vitamins. She cleaned houses to pay for the delivery. 8 months later, alone in a charity ward, she gave birth. Not to one baby, but to 2. Leo and Mia. They had Marcus's eyes, they had his chin, and they were the secret Elena guarded with her life. She knew the day would come when she would have to face him, but she needed to wait for the perfect moment. She needed him to be vulnerable. And now, 2 years later, inside courtroom 4B, that moment had arrived. Judge Arthur Sterling banged his gavel, bringing the courtroom to order. He was a man known for his distaste for theatrics, which was unfortunate for Marcus, whose lawyer was a performer. "Mr. Blackwood, you may proceed," the judge grumbled, adjusting his spectacles. Blackwood stood up. He was a tall man with a predatory smile. He buttoned his suit jacket and walked toward the bench. "Your Honor," Blackwood began, his voice smooth as oil, "we are here today to finalize the dissolution of this marriage. My client, Mr. Vance, has been exceedingly generous, despite Mrs. Vance's indiscretions." He gestured to a screen where grainy photos were projected. They showed Elena having coffee with a man. They showed Elena hugging a man outside a hotel. Elena watched stoically. The man was her cousin, David, who had helped her move boxes when she was kicked out. The hotel was the budget inn he was staying at because he couldn't afford a house in the city. It was all context-free manipulation. "We have testimony," Blackwood continued, "that Mrs. Vance was frequently absent, cold, and refused her marital duties. Furthermore, we have evidence that she deceived my client regarding her fertility issues to secure a marriage contract. She is a fraud, Your Honor," the gallery murmured. Jessica smirked, whispering loudly enough for the front row to hear. Barren and boring. Poor Marcus. "However," Blackwood pivoted, turning to face Elena, "Mr. Vance is a man of compassion. He wishes to avoid a lengthy trial that would only embarrass Elena further. We have prepared a final settlement offer." Blackwood slid a document across the table toward Sarah Jenkins. Sarah read it and gasped. She looked at Elena, her eyes wide. "Elena, this is insulting." Elena took the paper. Condition of settlement. 1. Elena Vance admits to adultery. 2. Elena Vance waives all rights to the Vance Family Trust. 3. Elena Vance receives a one-time payment of $50,000 and must vacate the state of Washington for a period of 5 years. $50,000 for 10 years of her life. It wouldn't even cover the rent for a year, let alone raise 2 children. But the worst part was the clause about leaving the state. Marcus wanted her gone. He wanted to erase her completely so he could play happy family with Jessica and their unborn child. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locking with Elena's. He mouthed the words, Take it." "Your Honor." Sarah Jenkins stood up, her voice shaking but determined. "My client rejects this offer. It is coercive and based on fabricated evidence." "Fabricated?" Blackwood laughed. "Mrs. Vance has been living in squalor for 2 years. We know she has no income. We know she has no prospects. This is charity, Your Honor. If she refuses, we will pursue full damages for emotional distress and fraud. She will leave this court with nothing but debt." Judge Sterling looked at Elena. "Mrs. Vance, do you understand the risk you are taking? If these allegations of adultery are proven, the prenup is valid, and you get 0. This settlement is a lifeline." Elena stood up. The courtroom went quiet. She smoothed the front of her cheap trench coat. "Your Honor," Elena said, her voice clear and ringing, "Mr. Vance claims I deceived him. He claims I failed to provide him with a family. He claims he wants to move on with his true heir." She pointed a trembling finger at Jessica's stomach. "He believes that child is the future of the Vance legacy." "Objection!" Blackwood shouted. "Relevance!" "The relevance," Elena said, reaching under the table and pulling out a large manila envelope, "is that Marcus Vance is lying to this court. He is lying to the press, and worst of all, he is lying to his mistress." Marcus frowned. This wasn't in the script. "What is she talking about?" he hissed at Blackwood. "I have no idea," the lawyer muttered. "Your Honor," Elena continued, stepping into the aisle, "I request a 10-minute recess. There are 2 witnesses outside that I would like to bring in. Their testimony will clear up the matter of the Vance legacy once and for all." "Witnesses?" Judge Sterling raised an eyebrow. "You didn't file a witness list, Mrs. Vance." "These aren't ordinary witnesses, Judge," Elena said, "and due to the sensitive nature of their identity, I kept them hidden until this very moment to protect them from Mr. Vance's influence." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "This is a circus. She's stalling. I want this finalized now." "Sit down, Mr. Vance," Judge Sterling barked. He looked at Elena, seeing the steel in her eyes. He was a good judge of character, and he saw something in her he hadn't seen in a long time. Absolute truth. 10 minutes. If this is a waste of time, Mrs. Vance, I will hold you in contempt." "It won't be," Elena promised. She turned and walked toward the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom. The gallery craned their necks. Marcus looked nervous for the first time. Jessica looked annoyed, checking her makeup in a compact mirror. "What is she doing?" Jessica snapped. "Who could she possibly bring?" Elena reached the doors. She took a deep breath. She pushed them open. Standing in the hallway was Eleanor's sister, holding the hands of 2 toddlers. A boy and a girl. They were dressed in their Sunday best. The boy in a tiny blue blazer, the girl in a white dress. They had golden hair. They had the distinctive, sharp jawline of the Vance family. Elena knelt down and smiled at them. "It's okay," she whispered. "Come with Mommy." She stood up, taking a child in each hand, and turned back to the courtroom. As she walked back down the aisle, the sound of the air conditioning seemed to vanish. A collective gasp swept through the room like a wave. Marcus Vance stood up slowly, his face draining of all blood until he looked like a wax figure. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jessica dropped her compact mirror. It shattered on the marble floor, but no one looked at it. Eleanor stopped in front of the judge's bench. She lifted the boy, Leo, into her arms. "Your Honor," she said, her voice breaking with emotion, but loud enough for the microphone to catch. "I would like to introduce the court to Leo and Mia Vance, Marcus's children, born 7 months after he threw me out into the rain." The silence in courtroom 4B was absolute. It was the kind of silence that usually precedes a natural disaster. Marcus Vance, a man who controlled a logistics empire worth billions, a man who could negotiate with union leaders and hostile governments without blinking, was trembling. He gripped the edge of the mahogany table until his knuckles turned white. He stared at the two children standing by Elena's legs. They were undeniable. Leo, the boy, was looking around the room with wide, inquisitive blue eyes, a shade of steel blue that was the specific genetic trademark of the Vance lineage. He scrunched his nose in a way that Marcus did when he was thinking. Mia, the girl, was clutching a small stuffed bear, her golden curls a perfect match to the photos of Marcus's own mother that hung in the family estate. "Impossible," Marcus whispered, the word barely escaping his throat. "It's not impossible, Marcus," Elena said softly, stroking Leo's hair. "It's just inconvenient for you." Jessica Thorne recovered from her shock first. Her survival instincts, honed in the shark tank of high society climbing, kicked in. She stood up, her face twisting into a mask of ugly rage that cracked her meticulously applied foundation. "This is a trick!" Jessica shrieked, pointing a manicured nail at the toddlers. "Look at them! She probably hired child actors, or she adopted them. Marcus, don't look at them. She's trying to manipulate you." "Sit down, Miss Thorne," Judge Sterling warned, his voice low and dangerous. "No, I will not sit down." Jessica turned to the gallery, playing to the reporters. "This woman is a fraud. She was barren for 7 years. Suddenly she shows up with 2-year-olds. Do the math. She cheated. Those are someone else's bastards that she's trying to pin on a billionaire." Elena didn't scream back. She didn't need to. She simply reached into the manila envelope again. "I expected this," Elena said calmly. "Marcus, do you remember the charity gala at the Four Seasons 3 months before you kicked me out? You cut your hand on a broken champagne flute." Marcus blinked, pulling his gaze away from the children. Yes. What does that have to do with anything? You bled on your handkerchief. You threw it in the trash in the bathroom," Elena said. "I kept it. I don't know why, really. Maybe because I missed you, even when you were standing right next to me. But when the babies were born, and I knew you would deny them, I used it." She handed a stapled document to the bailiff, who walked it over to the judge. "This is a DNA analysis from a genetic laboratory in Switzerland," Elena announced to the room. "It compares the genetic material from the handkerchief to buccal swabs taken from Leo and Mia at birth. The probability of paternity is 99.9%. Judge Sterling put on his reading glasses. He scanned the document, flipping the pages slowly. The rustling of the paper was the only sound in the room. "It appears to be in order," the judge said, looking over his spectacles at Marcus. "Mr. Vance, these children are yours. And based on the birth dates, they were conceived while you were still cohabiting with your wife, which makes them legitimate heirs." Marcus stood up slowly. He ignored Jessica's hand, clawing at his sleeve. He walked into the aisle, moving like a sleepwalker. He dropped to one knee in front of Leo. The little boy looked at the stranger in the expensive suit. He didn't cry. He just reached out a chubby hand and poked Marcus's silk tie. "Dada," the boy said. It was a random babble, a common first word, but it hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. Tears, genuine tears, pooled in Marcus's eyes. For all his ruthlessness, for all his cold ambition, Marcus had always wanted one thing above all else: a legacy. He had destroyed his marriage, chasing it, and here it was, staring him in the face, having been raised in poverty while he lived in a mansion. They look just like my father," Marcus choked out. He looked up at Eleanor, his expression a mix of awe and horror. "Why? Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried," Elena said, her voice trembling with the weight of 2 years of silence. That night in the hallway, I tried to tell you. You told me to get out. You told me I was depressing the furniture." Marcus flinched, as if she had slapped him. The memory washed over him, his cruelty, his impatience. He had thrown away his own children. "Marcus, stop it!" Jessica's voice cut through the moment like a buzzsaw. She marched over, grabbing Marcus by the shoulder and hauling him up. "So what? So she popped out a couple of kids. Big deal. We have a family now, a real family." She placed her hands emphatically on her pregnant belly. "These things," Jessica gestured dismissively at the twins, "are the past. This baby is the future. And unlike her, I didn't hide it. I've been by your side. These kids are probably messed up from living in a shelter anyway. You don't want damaged goods, Marcus." The cruelty of the statement caused a ripple of boos from the back of the courtroom. Even Marcus's high-priced lawyer, Blackwood, looked down at his shoes, uncomfortable. Elena's eyes went cold. She had allowed Marcus to see the children. She had allowed the DNA to be proven. But she would not allow this woman to insult her children's worth. "Damaged goods?" Elena repeated, her voice rising. "They are happy. They are loved. Which is more than I can say for the child you are carrying." "Excuse me?" Jessica laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "My child is the golden child, the heir to the Vance throne. Once the divorce is finalized today, and we get married, my son will be the primary beneficiary. Your twins will get a pity allowance, if that." Elena looked at the judge. "Your Honor, this brings me to the second piece of evidence. The reason I requested this hearing wasn't just to prove paternity. It was to protect Mr. Vance from a massive fraud." "Fraud?" Judge Sterling leaned forward. "Proceed, Mrs. Vance." Eleanor pulled a single thin sheet of paper from the envelope. It wasn't a lab report. It was a medical invoice. "Jessica claims she is carrying Marcus's child," Elena said, turning to face the mistress. "She claims she is 4 months pregnant." "And I am!" Jessica shouted. "I have the ultrasounds. I have the morning sickness. You're just jealous." "I don't doubt you are pregnant, Jessica," Elena said softly. "I just know for a fact that the baby isn't Marcus's." The accusation hung in the air. Marcus looked from Eleanor to Jessica. "What are you saying?" Marcus asked, his brow furrowing. "Of course it's mine. We've been together, exclusively." "Have you?" Elena asked. She walked toward the bench and handed the invoice to the judge. "Your Honor, this is a medical record from the Seattle Urological Institute. It is dated 14 months ago, 2 months after I left the mansion." Judge Sterling took the document. His eyebrows shot up toward his hairline. He looked at Marcus with a strange expression, half pity, half disbelief. "Mr. Vance," the judge said, "is this your signature on the consent form?" Marcus squinted at the paper the judge held up. He froze. "Elena, how did you get that?" Marcus hissed, his face flushing a deep crimson. "I'm still your wife, Marcus," Elena replied. "I'm still the emergency contact on your medical files. You forgot to change it. The clinic mailed the confirmation to the old P.O. box we shared. I picked it up a year ago." "What is it?" Jessica screamed, sensing the walls closing in. "What is that paper?" Elena turned to the gallery, addressing the room, but her eyes were locked on Jessica. "It is a bill for a vasectomy," Elena declared. The courtroom erupted. Reporters jumped to their feet. The noise was deafening. Judge Sterling banged his gavel furiously, but no one listened. "A vasectomy?" Jessica whispered, her hands dropping from her stomach. She looked at Marcus. "Marcus, that's a lie. Tell her it's a lie." Marcus Vance looked like a man whose soul was leaving his body. He slumped into his chair, covering his face with his hands. "I didn't want to get trapped again," Marcus mumbled, his voice audible only because the room had suddenly quieted to hear his answer. "After Elena, after I thought she was barren, and then the divorce started, I got paranoid. I thought women were only after my money. So I got the procedure. I didn't tell anyone. Not even you, Jess." He looked up at his mistress, his eyes suddenly hard and cold. "I've been sterile for over a year, Jessica." Jessica took a step back, her heels clicking on the floor. She shook her head violently. No, that's a mistake. Doctors make mistakes. It didn't take spontaneous reversal. It happens. I went for the follow-up count 3 months ago," Marcus said, his voice rising, growing louder with every word. 0 sperm count. 0, meaning there is absolutely no way, physically, biologically, or miraculously, that I am the father of that baby. Marcus stood up, towering over Jessica. The love and lust that had been there 10 minutes ago were replaced by a terrifying cold fury. "So," Marcus roared, the sound echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "Who is it? Who is the father?" Jessica burst into tears. It wasn't a pretty, sympathetic cry. It was the ugly, hyperventilating panic of a cornered animal. It was just one time," she sobbed, grabbing his lapels. "Marcus, please. You were working all the time. I was lonely. It was just the personal trainer. It didn't mean anything. I did it for us. I wanted to give you a baby so you'd be happy. I thought if I got pregnant, you'd finally marry me. You tried to pass off a trainer's bastard as my heir?" Marcus shoved her hands away. He looked at her with pure disgust. "You watched me kick my wife out. You watched me abandon my own flesh and blood. And you stood there laughing, knowing you were carrying another man's child. I love you," Jessica screamed, falling to her knees. "Marcus, please, don't leave me. I have nowhere to go. I leased the penthouse in my name. I can't pay for it. The car, the jewelry, it's all on your credit cards." "Not anymore," Marcus said. He turned to his lawyer. "Blackwood, cut her off. Cancel the cards. Evict her from the city apartment. I want her gone. If she comes within 500 feet of me, have her arrested." "With pleasure, Mr. Vance," Blackwood said, looking relieved to finally be on the moral high ground, even if just barely. Jessica looked around the room. The cameras were flashing blindingly. She saw the disgust on the faces of the jury, the judge, even the security guards. She looked at Elena. Elena stood calmly with her children. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who had just carried a heavy load up a mountain and finally set it down. "You witch!" Jessica lunged at Elena. "You ruined everything. You planned this. You knew." Before she could get within 3 feet of Elena, the security guard, Miller, the one who had greeted Elena at the door, stepped in front of her like a concrete wall. He grabbed Jessica by the arm. "That's enough, Ms. Thorne," Miller grunted. "Come with me. Get off me. I'm the future Mrs. Vance," Jessica shrieked as she was dragged toward the exit, her heels dragging on the carpet, her fur coat slipping off her shoulder. "I'm the victim here. He neglected me. You can't do this." The doors slammed shut, cutting off her screams. The silence returned to the courtroom, but the energy had shifted completely. Judge Sterling cleared his throat. He looked at the shattered remains of the hearing. "Well," the judge said, adjusting his robe, "Mr. Vance, it seems your petition for divorce, based on Mrs. Vance's adultery, is moot. In fact, considering the revelations, I am inclined to grant Mrs. Vance anything she asks for." Marcus looked at the judge, then he turned slowly to face Elena. He looked at the twins, who were now hiding behind Elena's legs, scared by the shouting. Marcus took a step toward them, his hands open in a pleading gesture. Elena, he croaked, his voice broken. I didn't know. I swear, I was a fool, a blind, arrogant fool. Please, let me fix this. Let me see them. I have so much money. I can give them the world. Eleanor looked at the man she had once worshipped. She saw the desperation in his eyes. He thought money could fix the hole he had dug. He thought he could just write a check and buy back the 2 years he had missed. She smoothed her frayed trench coat. She picked up Mia and held Leo's hand. "You can't give them the world, Marcus," Elena said softly. "You don't even know what their favorite color is. You don't know that Leo is afraid of thunderstorms or that Mia is allergic to strawberries." "I can learn," Marcus pleaded, stepping closer. "I can change." "Maybe," Elena said, "but that's not up to me anymore." She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I am not asking for a settlement anymore. I am not asking for reconciliation." "What are you asking for, Mrs. Vance?" Judge Sterling asked gently. Eleanor took a deep breath. She looked at Marcus one last time, seeing not the billionaire, but the sad, lonely man who had destroyed his own happiness. "I want full custody," she said firmly, "and I want half of everything." The courtroom was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a battlefield after the cannons had stopped firing. The air smelled of expensive cologne and the metallic tang of fear. Judge Arthur Sterling took a long sip of water. He removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He had sat on the bench for 30 years. He had seen murderers, thieves, and con artists, but he had rarely seen a man destroy his own life as efficiently as Marcus Vance had done in the last hour. "Mr. Blackwood," the judge said, addressing Marcus's lawyer, "do you have any defense against Mrs. Vance's petition? Do you have any evidence that she is unfit? Any proof that she committed adultery that wasn't manufactured by your client's paranoia?" Blackwood stood up. He looked defeated. He closed his briefcase. "No, Your Honor. We withdraw the previous motions. We have no counter-argument." "Good," Judge Sterling said. He turned his gaze to Marcus. Marcus was slumped in his chair, staring at the table. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out. The arrogance was gone. The posture of the billionaire titan was gone. He looked small. "Mr. Vance," the judge began, his voice echoing in the high ceilings, "you came into my courtroom seeking to discard a loyal wife. You attempted to defraud this court with false testimony. You attempted to disinherit your own children, children you didn't even bother to verify were yours because you were too busy chasing a fantasy." "I didn't know," Marcus whispered. "Ignorance is not a defense, sir." Sterling slammed his hand down. "It is a choice. You chose not to know. You chose to listen to a mistress over the woman you vowed to cherish. And now you will pay the price." The judge picked up his pen. "I am granting Mrs. Vance's petition for divorce on the grounds of cruel and inhumane treatment and adultery. The prenuptial agreement is hereby declared void due to fraudulent conduct by the petitioner." A gasp went through the room. The prenup was the iron wall protecting the Vance fortune. It was gone. "I am awarding primary physical and legal custody of Leo and Mia Vance to their mother, Elena Vance," the judge continued. "Mr. Vance, you will be granted supervised visitation rights, pending a psychological evaluation and parenting classes. You are not to see these children alone until a court-appointed therapist deems you fit." Marcus flinched. Supervised? Like a criminal? He was their father. "As for the division of assets," Judge Sterling looked at the financial documents. "Since the prenup is void, Washington is a community property state. Mrs. Vance is entitled to 50% of all marital assets acquired during the 7 years of marriage. Furthermore, given the egregious nature of your conduct, I am ordering you to pay for Mrs. Vance's legal fees, a lump sum alimony of $10 million and child support calculated at the highest bracket of your income." The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. Court is adjourned. Elena let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 2 years. Sarah Jenkins, her public defender, hugged her. "You did it, Elena. You're free. And you're rich." "I don't care about the money," Elena whispered, picking up Mia. "I just wanted them to be safe." She turned to leave, but Marcus blocked the aisle. He looked wrecked. His eyes were red-rimmed. He reached out a hand toward Leo, but the boy shied away, burying his face in Eleanor's coat. "Eleanor," Marcus pleaded, his voice cracking. "Please, don't take them away. Let me drive you home. Let me buy them toys. I can get them anything. Ponies. A house. Anything." Elena looked at him. She didn't feel hate anymore. She felt a profound, aching pity. "They don't need ponies, Marcus," she said calmly. "They need a father who didn't throw them away." "I can change." Marcus grabbed her arm, desperation making him clumsy. "I'll fire everyone. I'll sell the company. I'll just be a dad. Give me a chance." Elena gently removed his hand from her arm. "You had a chance," she said. "You had 7 years of chances. You had a chance when I stood in the hallway in the rain. You had a chance when I sent you letters that you returned unopened. You had a chance today, before you tried to destroy me for $50,000. She stepped around him. "You can see them on Saturdays, Marcus, at the park, with the supervisor present. Don't be late." Elena walked out of the courtroom, the heavy doors swinging open to a blinding flash of paparazzi cameras. But she didn't look like a victim anymore. She walked with her head high, her children in her arms, stepping over the cables and the chaos, leaving Marcus Vance standing alone in the empty aisle, the richest poor man in the world. The rain in Seattle hadn't changed. It still fell in sheets of grey, washing the city in a perpetual, melancholic gloom. But for Elena Vance, the rain no longer felt like an adversary. It was just weather. Inside the warm, amber-lit interior of the Vance Miller Art Gallery, the storm outside was nothing more than a backdrop to the triumph within. 5 years had passed since the gavel came down in courtroom 4B. 5 years since the secret was exposed, the mistress was exiled, and the empire was divided. Elena stood in the center of the Phoenix Wing, a new addition to the gallery dedicated entirely to art therapy for children in the foster system. She wasn't the shivering woman in the frayed trench coat anymore. She was a vision of reclaimed dignity. She wore a tailored navy dress that hugged her frame, her hair cut in a sharp, chic bob that framed a face no longer gaunt with hunger, but glowing with purpose. "Mum! Mum, look at this one!" The shout broke her reverie. Leo, now a boisterous 7-year-old with energy that seemed to vibrate the floorboards, came skidding across the polished concrete floor. He was holding a canvas that was still wet, smearing a little bit of blue paint on his cheek. "Careful, Leo," Elena laughed, kneeling down to his level, a habit she never broke, no matter who was watching. "We don't want to paint the floor. Tell me about it." "It's a storm," Leo declared proudly, pointing to the chaotic swirls of dark blue and black. "But look, right here, in the middle." Elena squinted. In the center of the painted hurricane, there was a tiny, defiant dot of bright yellow. "What is that?" "That's the lighthouse," Leo beamed. "It doesn't care about the water. It just shines." Elena felt a lump form in her throat. She kissed his forehead, right over the smudge of paint. "It's beautiful, Leo. Just like you." "I helped mix the yellow," a softer voice chimed in. Mia was sitting on a bench nearby, her legs swinging, not quite touching the floor. If Leo was the storm, Mia was the calm after it. She was observant, possessing a frighteningly high emotional intelligence for a second grader. She had Marcus's eyes, that piercing steel blue, but she used them to understand people, not to appraise them. "You did a great job, Mia." Elena smiled at her daughter. The gallery was filling up. It was the opening night of their autumn exhibition. Seattle's elite were there. Tech CEOs, philanthropists, city council members. They all wanted to shake Elena's hand. They all wanted to be associated with her success. She moved through the crowd with grace, accepting checks for the foundation, nodding at compliments, a queen holding court. But then, the air in the room shifted. It wasn't a sound. It was a vacuum, a silence that started at the front entrance and rippled backward as conversations died out and heads turned. The heavy glass doors opened, and a man walked in. He was wet from the rain. He shook a black umbrella and handed it to the coat-check girl, who looked at him with wide, nervous eyes. It was Marcus Vance. He was 45 now, but he looked 55. The vanity that had once defined him, the personal trainers, the hair plugs, the tan, had evaporated. He was thinner, his suit hanging slightly loose on a frame that had lost its imposing bulk. His hair was graying at the temples, not in a distinguished way, but in the way of a man who didn't sleep. He stood at the entrance, hesitating. He looked at the gallery, the warmth, the laughter, the champagne, the life. It was a world he had once ruled, but now he was just a spectator, a ghost haunting the feast. Elena saw him immediately. Her heart didn't race with fear anymore. It didn't even pound with anger. It just beat steadily, a rhythm of indifference. She excused herself from a conversation with the mayor and walked toward him. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice even. Marcus flinched, as if he hadn't expected her to approach him. He looked at her, his eyes traveling over her face, drinking in the sight of her. "Elena," he rasped. His voice was gravelly, unused. "You look incredible. The gallery, it's magnificent." "Thank you," she said politely. "It's been a good year." "What are you doing here, Marcus? It's not your visitation weekend." "I know," he said quickly, holding up a hand as if to ward off a blow. "I know. I'm not here to. I didn't want to cause a scene. I just saw the lights. I was driving by. And He trailed off. He reached into the pocket of his damp trench coat, a coat that cost $5,000 but looked sad on him, and pulled out a small, velvet-wrapped box. "I brought this," he said, extending it to her. "For Mia." I remembered she said she liked drawing last Saturday. It's a set of charcoal pencils, compressed soot from a vineyard in Tuscany. I had them flown in. Elena took the box. It was heavy. It was excessive. It was classic Marcus, trying to solve a simple desire with a grand, monetary gesture. "She's 7, Marcus. She uses crayons, but—" "Thank you. I'll give it to her." Can I say hello?" He looked past her, searching the room desperately for the twins. Eleanor hesitated. The court order allowed supervised visits, which they did every Saturday at the park with a social worker present. Those visits were stiff, awkward affairs. Marcus would bring expensive toys the kids didn't know how to play with. He would ask them about the stock market or their grades. They would ask him if he had a dog. They were strangers speaking the same language. "Briefly," Elena said. "They are distracted." She led him to the bench. Mia looked up. Her eyes widened slightly. "Hello, Father," Mia said. She called him Father. Never Dad, never Daddy. Just Father, like a character in a Victorian novel. It was a distinction that cut Marcus deeper than any knife. "Hi, Mia," Marcus said, kneeling down, his knees cracking audibly. "I brought you some pencils. For your art." "Thank you," she said, taking the box politely. She didn't open it. She just set it down next to her juice box. Leo ran over, stopping skittishly when he saw Marcus. "Hi," he mumbled, hiding slightly behind Eleanor's skirt. "Hey, champion," Marcus said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I like your painting. The storm. It's very powerful." "It's a lighthouse," Leo corrected him. "Right, of course. A lighthouse." Marcus swallowed hard. He looked up at Eleanor and then at the kids. He looked at the warmth surrounding them. "Eleanor," he said, standing up. "Do you have a moment? In private?" Eleanor nodded to the security guard she had hired, Miller, the same man from the courthouse, who now headed her security team. Miller watched Marcus like a hawk as Eleanor walked her ex-husband to a quiet corner near a sculpture of jagged metal. "What is it, Marcus?" "I'm lonely, Elle." The words tumbled out of him, unbidden. He looked shocking in his vulnerability. This was the titan of logistics, the man who made unions tremble. And he was shaking. "I have the money," he whispered. "I have more money than God now. The Asian merger went through. I bought the island in the Caribbean. But I go home, and it's quiet. My echo is the only thing that answers me." Elena said nothing. She let the silence stretch. "I was thinking," Marcus continued, his voice gaining a desperate manic speed. What if we tried again? Not a marriage. I know I blew that. But dinner. Just us. No social worker. I could buy a house near here. I could fund this entire gallery for a century. I could set up trusts for the twins that would make them royalty. Just let me in. Please. Let me be a dad. Let me be a husband again." He reached out, trying to take her hand. His fingers were cold. Elena looked at his hand. She remembered the warmth of it years ago. She remembered how that hand had thrown a glass into the fireplace. She remembered how that hand had signed the check for the mistress's apartment while she was counting coupons for milk. She gently, but firmly, stepped back. "Marcus," she said softly. "You think you can negotiate this. You think this is a contract dispute. You think if you offer a high enough price, I'll sign on the dotted line." "I can give them the world," Marcus pleaded. "You don't get it," Elena said, her eyes sad but dry. "You had the world. You had it sleeping in the guest room while you were texting Jessica. You had it growing in my belly while you were telling your lawyers I was barren. I made a mistake." "No," Elena shook her head. "You made a choice. You chose the shiny thing. You chose the ego stroke. You chose the easy path. And choices have consequences that money can't fix." She gestured to the twins, who were now laughing with Miller, showing him the charcoal pencils. "They are happy, Marcus. They are whole, and they are safe. You are a part of their life. Yes. You are their biological father. You will see them on Saturdays. You will pay for their college, but you will not sit at my dinner table. You will not buy your way into their hearts. So that's it." Marcus's voice broke, tears finally spilling over his cheeks. "I'm just... the checkbook, that's my legacy." Elena looked at him with a finality that shattered the last of his hope. "You wanted a legacy, Marcus. You wanted an heir to the Vance empire. You have them. But you traded the love of a family for the silence of a mansion. You traded a diamond for a stone because the stone sparkled a little brighter in the moment." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Enjoy your island, Marcus. Enjoy your merger. But do not mistake my kindness for an open door. The lock was changed 5 years ago, and the key doesn't exist anymore. Elena turned around. She didn't look back. She walked across the gallery floor, the click of her heels sounding like a victory march. She walked straight to her children, scooping Leo up into her arms and kissing Mia's cheek. Marcus stood by the jagged metal sculpture. He felt invisible. The donors walked past him, drinking champagne, talking about the future. No one looked at him. He was the richest man in the room. He could buy everyone in this building 10 times over. And he had never been poorer. He turned up the collar of his expensive trench coat. He walked to the glass doors and pushed them open. The cold, wet wind of Seattle hit him in the face. He stepped out into the rain, his driver waiting at the curb with the door of the Maybach open. "Home, sir?" the driver asked. Marcus looked back at the gallery one last time. He saw Elena laughing. He saw the golden light. "Yes," Marcus whispered, stepping into the dark interior of the car. To the house. Not home. Just to the house. The door slammed shut, sealing him inside his velvet coffin as the car pulled away into the night, leaving the warmth of the family he destroyed behind him forever. Wow. Talk about a reality check. Marcus thought his money made him invincible, but in the end, it just made him lonely. He threw away a diamond to chase a glittery rock, and by the time he realized his mistake, the price was his entire happiness. It just goes to show, loyalty isn't something you can buy, and karma isn't something you can bribe. Elena walked through fire to protect her children, and she came out the other side stronger than ever. So what do you think? Did Marcus deserve a second chance, or did Elena do the right thing by keeping the door closed? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. We post new drama every single day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.